Welcome to another episode of Clinic Success Secrets, the podcast where we uncover the strategies and insights that drive clinic growth and elevate patient care. I'm your host, Tomás O'Dwyer, founder of Clinic Success Partners, medical digital marketing agency dedicated to helping clinics serve more patients and achieve the success that they deserve. Today, we are thrilled to have the one and only Jamie Spann, founder and CEO of Business Savvy Physician, joining us. Jamie has dedicated her career to helping physicians grow and strengthen their practices through innovative business strategies, staff recruitment, workflow improvements, and overall just elevating that patient experience, which, on a side note, if you're listening, will be largely what we're talking about today. With over 2 decades of experience working with hundreds of medical professionals, Jamie brings unparalleled insights into what it takes to succeed in private practice. So, with that being said, Jamie, pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, before we dive right into all the insights, the knowledge, the wisdom, the gems, the tips, everything else in between that you have, would you mind sharing to the listeners how you got into the role that you have today? What was your journey?
Yeah, sure. So I come from I'm the daughter of a maxillofacial surgeon, so I've been around doctors my whole life. My dad was a private practice trauma surgeon, so I grew up helping him in his office during the summer, so I know what happens inside of a practice. And then I also know from experience working with physicians because I was in medical sales for over 20 years as well. So I've worked with all kinds of physicians, both private practice physicians and hospital employed physicians. And I kept seeing the same thing. They kept having issues on the business side. And, it's weird. They don't ever get taught anything about business in med school or residency. So it was something that I wanted to help them with and figure out a way to solve this problem. So I started Business Savvy Physician. But since, I have a place for private practice physicians in my heart because of my dad, I wanted to focus on helping them and med spas because, nobody's there to help them. If you work for a hospital, you're supposed to have, them helping you with marketing and things like that. Does it always happen? No, but it's supposed to. But on the private practice side, they don't actually have that. So I wanted to be somebody that would be a great resource to help guide them and help them grow and answer questions. So that's why I started Business Savvy Physician.
Love it. And then rewinding or fast forwarding to today, what does the work that you do at Business Savvy Physician actually consist of? What areas of helping a clinic, do you focus on to assist clinic owners?
Yeah, so I help them. I have a lot of docs who I help start a private practice from figuring out their business plan. We go through a checklist. We figure out everything they need to get the doors open. And then once the doors are open, I help them work on their workflows, processes and procedures, protocols, making sure their front desk is trained properly, making sure they have a good plan in place on not just billing insurances if they're doing that, but also denials and handling, insurance and things like that. We look at all their processes and make sure that everything is the way it should be. And, I make sure they understand what numbers to keep an eye on. And then we also make sure they have a solid online presence so that their patients are finding them when they need to find them. And then we help with recruiting. So if they're having a hard time finding staff or keeping staff, we look at why they might be losing staff, but also help them get staff, anybody from front desk to physician. So that's what we do.
Nice. Oh, I love that. And we referred before to the patient experience, what that consists of. What, in your words, what does patient experience mean to you, and why is it so critical for clinic success?
Yeah. So a clinic can't thrive unless they have patients, right? And in my opinion, patient experience is anywhere from when the the first touch point of the patient. So whether they find the doctor online, whether they see an ad and answer the ad, whether they just randomly call the doctor's office, it has anything from the very first touch point of the patient through their whole process of, when they get scheduled, when they come in to see the doctor, their follow-up information, and even after they leave the practice, and even following up for rebooking them for the next appointment. So to me, that encompasses the whole thing. That's what I think is important. When you're thinking about patient experience, you need to think about every single person they touch along the whole way and what happens to them through the whole process.
I love that. And then within that process itself, would you mind walking us through what are some key touch points in the patient journey that clinic owners tend to often look?
Yeah, man, there's a bunch. So I think one of the biggest things that patients that affects patient experience is cancellations and no-shows is like your big one, right? I think one way to prevent having cancellations and no-shows is how you follow up the patient to remind them about their appointments, right? So I think it's super important that you reach out to the patients at least 2 times prior to their appointment, maybe 3, and you need to have 2 different ways to reach out to them. So your common ways are going to be a text message, a phone call, and also an email. I think it's imperative that you have a text message and an email, but at least one of those, but ideally both of those. You can also call. I think most people don't answer phone calls to, numbers they don't know, right? And then whether they listen to a voice message or not, that kind of depends too. So definitely you need to at least have a text message and an email um, to prevent no-shows. And then I would, remind them of their appointment at least 3 to 5 days prior to their appointment, and then also 1 day prior to their appointment. And then if you want to do 1 hour prior to their appointment, you can do that too. It just kind of depends on what you want to do. But reminding patients is a huge deal. So that's like the first big thing I would say. Um, if you're not, and then when you do get into all that, you need to be clear if you have like cancellation policies or procedures in place for that. It's important for your patients to know that ahead of time so they're not mad at you for if they don't show or if they're late and they didn't know about it, right? So it's important for your staff to share that when they're booking a call with the patient or when they're scheduling the appointment. We make sure that they know they shouldn't be, you know, late. Otherwise, they're going to get billed or something like that if that's your process. Um, Another big one I would say, training your staff. Staff is super important when it comes to patient experience. If you have poorly trained staff, it's gonna lead to, inconsistent treatments. Their quality of care could be, not as good, which ultimately damages your reputation. So how you train your staff is super important on how the patient or is, super important for your patient experience, right? Um, anything from not doing what they say they're going to do. I mean, how many times you go to the doctor's office and the front desk person needs to be super happy and smiling. And even people, when they answer the phone, they need to be smiling and happy and helpful. And if you say you're going to do something, if you say you're going to get back to the patient, you need to get back to the patient. That's just as important to do that. Um, let's see. Those are like two of my big ones. Online presence is a huge one. I think it's super important to ask your patients following their procedure for a review. You ideally want to set it up for a positive patient review, so that you look really good online. Because as we know, like something like 89% of patients look online before they actually book a call or schedule a call with the doctor. So having a solid online presence is super important. I don't know. Do you have an idea of? I suggest like for a med spa, I feel like they should, have at least 200, patient reviews. And if you're an actual medical practice, I say like 80. But one way you could see how you rank against competition is just, type in like neurosurgeon near me and see how many pop up, or med spa near me and see who pops up and how many reviews that they have. I think that's one way that you can figure out about how many you need to be highly ranked and successful as well. Um, there's tools you can use to also help improve your patient experience. I think those are important. And a lot of times you can look at your EMR to see, if that's something that it can help you with and look at what data and reports that they give you. Um, but you can use it and I also think it's super important to reach out for patient engagement is another one that I suggest. We talk about, fostering your relationships, making sure it's personal. Maybe have them respond to you when you send them a text saying, "Hey, are you going to be there?" Make them respond to you and say yes, because that's one way. One, they saw the message because they responded, but it also shows, just a little personal touch, right? I also think sending emails is a huge deal, as you know, for marketing and stuff. But, letting patients know what new services or procedures or products you have is a big way to, get them involved and get them excited. Making sure you post regularly. These things are good ways for, improving your patient experience as well. I think that's so
That's a good
quick.
start. That's a good start. No, that's amazing. And I would say on the topic of how many reviews you get on Google, I think there's a saying that I say to people. Nobody's ever gone on Amazon and bought the pair of glasses or shoes with the least amount of reviews. So it is never going to hurt. Well, assuming you're doing a good job, it's never going to. Few more 5-star reviews never hurt anybody. But yes, to answer your point, I think generally if you just type in, your main services or your type of clinic, be it med spa, be it, chiro, dentist, gynecology, anything like that, benchmark where you're at in terms of reviews, compared to competitors. Maybe if you're doing stuff like Botox, filler, anything like that, look up those specific treatments. You will get an idea fairly fast of how competitive your landscape is. And your goal should obviously be to drastically outdo that. Um, it does obviously raise a bigger question. If you're not showing up at the top and your competitor, even though you have way more reviews, that would probably be a bigger indicator that you need to have your website looked at and have an SEO specialist.
100% agree.
But
And when you talk about that, another thing regarding patient experience is your website, obviously, right? You want it to be super user friendly. You want them to be able to book calls or at least know what phone number to call you on quickly. A solid website is super important to have, making the experience easy for a patient to know exactly what you offer and how to get a hold of you.
100%. And then I think a bigger thing as well is, um, beyond making it easy to get them in the door, your best feedback is always going to be from your customers or your patients. So on that topic, how would you recommend clinics gather and utilize patient feedback to improve their services? Is there anything that you see to be particularly effective with your clients?
Yeah, so again, this goes back to using software to kind of help you. A lot of times your EMR might have some way to email all your patients. You could set up a survey request, try to keep it simple. Um, you could also have some kind of a box or something in your front at your lobby asking, with the way they could submit something as well. And I think it's important to even ask your staff if they have suggestions on ways to improve as well, because a lot of times they see what's going on or they hear from your patients. So I wouldn't rule out your staff. It's also important to have, monthly meetings, quarterly meetings, whatever, with your staff to talk through these things on patient issues. What you want is to get it on the front end so that you don't get dinged on the back end and get a bad patient review on Google or something because you weren't trying to solve it on the front end. But that said, if that happens, you just respond to the Google review is what we tell our clients. Respond to the review saying, "I'm sorry you had that experience. We'll look into this. Please call the office and ask for blah, blah, blah. If, you want to talk about it some more, or we'll be reaching out to you," or however you want to address it. Just address it. But it is important to look at those things because if you see something consistently, then you have an issue and you need to fix it.
I love that. And then with regards to implementing all these changes, you've obviously worked with a myriad of different clinics. different sorts. You've seen some great results. Could you share an example of a clinic that transformed its patient experience and then saw some measurable results?
Yeah. So, one of my clinics that I worked with had, they've kinda outgrown their practice, right? Like, they needed more space, but that said, they weren't moving anytime soon, so what we did was, instead of they had one door or window that was used to checking in patients and checking out patients. I suggested creating a whole 'nother checkout window, so that way when you, had a patient, you had one place they check in, go through all their stuff, and you had a whole 'nother area where a patient was checking out, and it, decreased wait times for patients, which was huge. It prevented bottlenecks up at and long lines at the check-in, and so I think that was a really, really big game changer for this particular clinic and the patient experience, and everybody was a lot happier because that's for sure. So it helped with the workflow issue that they were having, one of them.
I love that. And then with regards to, you mentioned they're kind of outgrowing certain facets of their clinic. And when physicians are trying to grow their practices, what are some of the biggest problems or mistakes that you see, and how can they avoid them? Apart from just hiring you, that's obviously a given.
Right? That would just make their life easier, okay? Huh.
Got
So
any problems? Talk to Jamie.
oh, right. No, gosh. S Wait, now you got me. Say the questioning.
What are the most common mistakes that you see when physicians are trying to grow their mistakes, and how can they be avoided?
Yeah, yeah, okay. So, the biggest mistake I see client or physicians make when they start to grow, especially when they get started, I always suggest make sure you are slim in the beginning because you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of patience. Like, keep it as lean as possible. But once you start to grow, I think physicians forget that they need to pivot. And I think pivoting is like one of the biggest things that, these clinics need to remember because you're outgrowing the 3 to 5 people you had as employees, and now you're at like 10 to 15. So you need to adjust the ways you do things, so that your processes are just going to be different, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing to pivot. You just got to remember it's normal. We've got to pivot, and then even when you get past that, so constantly pivoting as you grow is super common, and it's not a bad thing. You just got to be open minded to a little bit of change. That's probably the biggest thing I see that they don't do. And so then they're trying to run a practice with 20 people the same way they were doing it with 5, and it's just not working. Because your patients, you have tons more patients too.
Yeah, and again, I would actually mirror this just from my own personal experience. We often talk about some of our more techie, podcasts. We'll talk a lot about AI, and I love discussing the idea of leverage in detail. And for anyone listening, there's 4 types of leverage we can use. This labor, that is capital. If you're throwing money into something, and the leverage just being the difference between your input and your output. Labor, more people are helping you, great. Capital, as I said, you can invest it. That sort of acts as a force multiplier. And then you got things on the tech side, such as code and content. And code really just being synonymous with technology in general. You know, that can really, really streamline things. Now, obviously, for a brick and mortar business, you do need people to actually help. But what I would say is, in terms of optimizing your workflows, it is amazing how fast you can get there with technology. Now, rolling back to the point about labor and having help effectively, um, I know from my personal experience, we recently, I think we increased our team by, I think we 3x our the size of our team, and it's from personal experience. It's amazing having more people on, but it's the complexity grows exponentially
You
because yeah,
gotta think of it a little bit different. Yeah,
it's
it's just
it's entirely different because what I always say to our team is, on a meta spiritual level, everything starts internal, but it is true. The standards internally for communication and workflows and efficiency has to always be higher than the client's expectations, because any inefficiencies between us as a team gets amplified because you can never communicate by definition if a client is expecting some information, but is not passed effectively within the team, you by definition cannot get it to the client in time. So what we have found is the importance of flawless communication and culture and workflows can't be overstated. Um, do you have any thoughts on growing teams and how you approach that from a management standpoint? And after that, I'd like to talk to you about the recruitment, but that's a we
Just gonna say hire slow, fire fast is one is the first thing that I thought of. But I mean, I think it's important to figure out like when you are looking for somebody on your team, they have to fit the culture of your practice. Um, things like that. But I also think you need to look at everybody's individual strengths. And as you grow, you need to look at you're gonna start having a ladder of like, your visionary is usually the doctor, the head person, and then the people below it. And you just gotta rethink, sometimes early on, this particular person was the right person for that job. But as you grow, you may have to redo people's job descriptions, and you're gonna have to redo how you have it stacked and make sure you have the right people in the right place for those particular things. And it's okay that it may change over time. Um, what's hard is if you've got a person who's been with you forever, it doesn't mean you need to get rid of them. It just means you need to, you know, create or put them in the position where they'll thrive and that it works for them. Like their skill level may be over here, and that's okay, but you just got to know what everybody's skill level is, where they thrive, where they don't thrive. And because if you've got them in a position where they're not doing as well in certain areas, it's affecting your practice. And so that's important to look at and pay attention to. Also, it's hard to be a leader to like adjust that. So maybe hire an office manager to help you because typically doctors don't like to be the one to, for any conflict, really, they don't like conflict, which is fine. But that's why you get consultants or other, office managers to help you do that.
nice. I can attest that's definitely been my experience with our client base and our podcast. And I think it's that whole empathetic personality style. You don't necessarily want to be the point of contact when it comes to confrontation at times. Um, but on the topic, as you mentioned, hire slow and fire fast. That's definitely something that, yeah, again, as with any business owner, it's a lesson you kind of need to learn, whether you like it or not. But on that topic, how the hiring part, how do you go about approaching staff recruitment to ensure that they're a great fit for clinic culture and goals? Like, what are some do's and don'ts when recruiting staff?
I think the biggest thing to remember when recruiting staff, first of all, you need to be honest with yourself about what you're looking for. You need to make a job description of this position of exactly what you're looking for. And then when you have people interviewing for it, you need to make sure they can do those things. And if there's maybe not something on the list that they can't do, is this something that can be taught or not? Maybe being good with patients and stuff that not isn't necessarily something can be taught. If you have people who aren't really friendly and don't like to be around patients, it's not going to be a good fit. It's just not. So I think you need to be honest with yourself about what you're looking for in this particular person. And when somebody's coming in, be honest and look at what their qualifications are. And then it also needs to be good fit on both sides. So I think people forget that. Like you may really want this person, think they'd be a great fit, but this person you can see is hesitant for whatever the reasons. If it's not a good fit for them, it's not going to work. So don't try to make it work if it's not going to, because ultimately they'll end up quitting and then you're going to have to go through the whole process again quickly.
Mm,
So
yeah,
that's probably one of the biggest things. Make sure it fits on both sides equally. Otherwise, it's not a good fit. And then talking about like driving distance, even to the practice, like all the things. Do they have somebody, who can help them if something's wrong with a kiddo, and or do you let them bring the kid to work, or like whatever the case, like these are all things that come up.
no, I agree with that. And then when it comes to, I suppose, team, retention, for lack of a better word, culture, enjoying it, fostering that community, making people feel heard, it's part of a family. Um, what are your do you have a framework that you like to use, or just general do's and don'ts? Again, how does that look? when you come on board and consult?
I think culture is a big one that people forget about, right? And I think you, over time, you do create a culture in your workspace. You want it to be a happy place that people go to. Um, you want everybody to get along. You don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable there. Otherwise, again, they're not going to be happy and they're going to end up leaving. Um,
Mm,
so I think it's important to pay attention to how your people get along. I think it's important to make sure everybody feels valued as a employee. So, you should do your one-on-ones with every single person, whether it's quarterly or maybe yearly, however you do that. I also think it's important to have, meetings with the whole staff all together at least once a quarter, maybe once a month, just depends on where you are in your practice. And again, make sure they all feel heard and understood. And a big part of that is making sure you're sharing information with them so they feel a part of the team, like they know what's going on. If you're not being real and explaining like any new processes or any new people that are coming or things like that, then they feel left out, not part of the team. I also think it's important to I've done a post about, what your employees look for. If you want, I think it's important to recognize people, right? That are doing really well, whether it's giving them a little bonus in cash, whether it's a gift card, whether, maybe you bring lunch in for everybody, although ideally, I'm sure that's nice once in a while, but ultimately, they probably all would rather just getting a cash bonus of some sort, right? So it just depends on where you on your practice. Maybe it's just a $25 gift card somewhere, right? To Target or, anything. But just some kind of recognition to make your employees stand out and say, like, I appreciate you. You are valued. You're doing a great job. Things like that is they're really important. And then I do also think doing something together as a team, like a team building thing outside of your practice is super helpful as well. Not necessarily going out and getting drinks, maybe, bowling or, there's a lot of things, top golf, like whatever the case. There's things you can go do as a group for something fun and outside of the practice.
I love that.
Mhm.
And then on the, it's easy to say as for team. Again, I know I'm rapid firing through a lot of content here, but it's just there's so many areas that I know we can double down on again, and I definitely would love to do this. But I really would love to just get a bird's eye view of a little tidbit of the different areas that you like to help your clients with, because I know this is gold for anybody listening. We again specifically help, the digital marketing side of things. We bring patients in the door. We're great at it. If you want more reviews, we got systems. If you want new websites, we have systems. When it comes to finances, the operations, and the workflows, I think it's so essential to talk to specialists. And as I say, a smart person learns from their mistakes. A wise person learns from others. Um, you have the data set of all of your clients, so I've no doubt there's a lot to be said from learning from that. So when it comes to the clinic owners themselves, um, we've done, on our end, uh, for the Clinic Success Secrets podcast, I think we've done. I think I've done. It's at the time of us recording this, it's Wednesday. I think I've had five. It's my fifth or sixth podcast since Monday morning. So it's it's
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's been a lot. But we've been talking to a lot of clinic owners. But what jumps to me is 9 times out of 10, the constraint is I suppose are you familiar with the concept, the theory of constraints?
No.
It's fundamentally, basically, it's my background was biomedical engineering, and there's a theory in engineering called theory of constraints, and that's basically, you know, um, a workflow or a process generally will encounter some sort of bottleneck. It's a different word. For a business, it might be your cash flow. Another business, it might be your operations, etc.
And it's a change every, however
Exactly.
often it can change over
Yeah.
time anyway.
Exactly. But it's a great mental model to say, okay, what is my current constraint? Let's widen that. It's like flowing water through a pipe. I always think, where's or a bottleneck? Where is the current constraint that we need to widen to let the water flow through to the next one, as you said. Um,
Mhm.
but in my experience, there's a Peter Drucker book, Managing Oneself, I always, when I talk to clinic owners in the podcast or clients and so on, they are the constraint, and not for a lack of skill. Everyone's, I'm sure they're great doctors and providers and so on, but it generally boils down to, as you said, a lack of business skills in different areas or a lack of time. So touching on the lack of time side of things, how do you help clinic owners create a more sustainable work-life balance while managing their practices?
Yeah, it's a hard question. It's a great question. It's a hard question because every practice is so different. Every person who runs a practice is so different. So that's why I'm more of a boutique firm, right? So I look at every practice individually to see like what's truly going on. Who do you have in place? Are they the right ones? Do we need to move people around a little bit, or do we need to hire some more people to help you? Or what's going on that we need to fix. I work with a lot of doctors who are starting a practice, like a lot, um helping them figure out how to do it. I introduce them to my vetted network, uh things like that. And then once the other docs who are actually in a practice, like we just really focus on, I'm more of a resource. Sometimes they just want to call and say, hey, this happened, what do I do? And I think it's super important for doctors to have mentors in their practice, just other doctors who do what they do, right? But in a way, I'm a big believer on like having your own board of directors, right? So you'll have your lawyer, you'll have your CPA. I think it's important to have like a consultant or somebody who has an idea of what goes on in a private practice or a med spa to figure out like, okay, here's the situation. What do you think? Or I'm about to have a big party. What's the best way to get leads? Or whatever the case. Like, it's important to have somebody you can talk to just to bounce ideas off of or ask, hey, is this a good idea or not a good idea? And like you said, you are always learning from other people too. Like, so am I. But they shouldn't be afraid to ask questions and talk to experts in other areas that they may not know about as much. So I think it's common, and they just need to be more open mind to doing that because it really does help.
Nice. I love that. And then on the topic of mentors, which you touched on there, two, actually, the first question, how do you have any advice on identifying good people that to be mentors, um, as a clinic owner?
Ugh, that's hard. I think one, they have to want to be a mentor to you, right? That's like a big thing. If they're
Yeah.
open to, helping you, usually a mentor is somebody to some degree. Usually it's somebody you've worked with in the past or from somewhere. But if they're not necessarily somebody maybe you admire them for whatever reason, go ask, hey, would you be open to being my mentor? I love what you did, blah, 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 or whatever. I think it's a nice thing. And a lot of people will probably say, yeah, sure. But I think and whether maybe you are having set times once a month with this person or weekly or however you set it up to discuss and help you grow, I think this person has to have time to do it, want to do it, be open to doing it. And you guys, your personalities kind of need to get along a little bit. Mm, I think sometimes if you butt heads, or I mean, you don't always have to agree with that person, right? It's okay to disagree. Yeah, it's gonna happen. You don't have to agree with everything, but be open to what they say. But if you're constantly agreeing and you don't want to do anything different, then that might not be a good person for you because I mean, or you're not in a position where you're open to growing or change or something. Maybe just a bad time for it. I don't know.
Nice. And beyond the mentor side of things, do you have any books in particular that you'd recommend, for clinic owners or med spa owners?
Uh, there's one I'm reading now called The Transition. I think it's called is it Transition or Traction? Hold on, I'll look it up.
Oh,
Uh,
Traction by Gina Wickman.
yes.
Yeah,
I'm really liking that one.
yeah. It's a heavy one.
But yeah, again, though, it kind of has to do with like making sure you have the right seats and the right people in the right seats and figuring out like, okay, what's your layout, and it kind of helps you free focus, I think.
I'll have a quick look there. There's another book for anyone listening that wants tractions like yeah, it's about implementing his system. It's called EOS, but there's another book by him. I started reading it. I found it much more digestible as a starting point. I think it was called Get a Grip,
Okay.
an entrepreneurial fable, and it was about that. It sort of gives a fable about
Actually, I think that is the one I was reading. Isn't it Traction Get a Grip? Or is it
I think, yeah, it's called Traction Get a Grip in Your Business, but then there's one called Get a Grip, an entrepreneurial fable. I think it's on Audible for anyone listening. Basically gives a story of
that's the one I'm doing, is the Traction Get a Grip.
right, yeah. Well, yeah, and he's also got books on. I need to pick this up myself. I need to.
That's what I was doing Audible. Whenever I'm driving to and from places, I just throw it on the in the car and listen to it while I go. It's a lot easier sometimes.
Nice, yeah. As the other one's good as well. The fable one, because it's basically sort of a metaphor of somebody whose business was falling apart. They didn't know what to do, and then they started implementing this EOS system, and it made a major difference. So,
Okay, I'll add that to the list.
it's a, but again, Traction is the it's like the college book you want to read. If you want to read the high school book first, that's the fable one.
All right, good.
Yeah. So, when you were working with the clinic, Jamie, you know, how do you measure success? Are there any specific metrics that you prioritize? I understand it's a boutique firm, so maybe it's a case by case basis, or how does that look?
I think my first question always to my clients is, what's your goal? Like, I say, what are their goals, right? What are their like year goals? What are short-term goals, longer-term goals? And then what are your headaches? What is driving you crazy in your practice that's keeping you up at night? And that's kind of where I start there. And then from there, we figure out, metrics that have to do with their goals. But a lot of times it might be trying at ways to get new patients, right? Um, but I think it's so important to know your KPIs. I can help them set up a platform maybe to, keep track of them in an easy way so that they have it all in one spot and they know. And I think, each like their staff to some degree needs to know what's going on as well as like what important numbers they need to keep track of. I think they need to know the money coming in and the money going out. That's super important. Those are big numbers. They need to know if you're billing insurances, they've got to know their denial rate. And if it's, like higher than 5%, they've got to figure out why is it higher? Like, is anybody even working it? I think that's a common one that doctors, say, oh, I'll use my EMR system has it. But a lot of times those people don't actually go after their denials like they say they're going to. So you have a really high denial rate and nobody's working your denials, which is huge. That equals a lot of money. Another thing you need to look at is how many patients are no-showing, right? Because those no-shows or cancellations are equal to numbers and how many dollars. And I've just actually did a video on this that we'll be posting soon, but you need to look at how many patients you have not showing up or canceling on you every single month, and you divide that by the number of patients that were booked that month, and then you take that times 100. And if you have 3% or higher or over 3%, you need to really say like, what is going on? Because that's a lot of money that it's equal to. And the way you can figure that number out is by figuring out how much each patient's worth. That's another important number to know, how much each patient is worth. So that way, if you have no shows and cancellations,
Is that the lifetime value that you look at plus, or you're saying
I
the
look at
initial consultation?
each visit. I like to look at how much each patient
Consultation
worth per
basis.
visit.
Right. Okay.
Because, everybody's different with how often
Yeah.
patients are coming and what they're looking for if they had surgery. So even every specialty is going to be a little bit different too.
All right. Yeah. So that's a conservative one. Obviously, it could be more if they're a new potential client that could stick for years. But
Yeah.
that 3% if the average consultation value was for the sake of, again,
Easy numbers.
say, yeah, say
Yeah, so, like,
$100.
I was doing numbers like, let's say you see 20 patients a day. Let's say 3 don't show up or cancel per day. That's, 15 a week. And let's just say I think my number that I had used for Easy Map was like, let's just say your average income's about $150 per patient. I mean, I think that had something like $122,000 a year, something crazy. I know. So it's important to know your numbers.
Insane. That's it.
And you wouldn't even think about it, but it's like, you think, oh, three's not that many. But if you actually put numbers to it and do it for a year, like that adds up.
Yeah,
That's important.
that single-handedly is your probably your marketing budget plus a team member.
Yeah.
You for that whole, yeah,
Important number to know. That's what I'm saying. Like, know your numbers.
that's an
I did a video on like important KPIs to know in practice that has a whole list of different things and how to get like not just what to look at, but like how to get those numbers.
yeah. Make sure to send that my way, and we'll add it to the show notes, and I can definitely add that to I'll be binging your content. Just a heads up.
Go ahead. There's where you when you need it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take you up on that. In terms of trends, then, so we're talking about the past, we're talking about the present, the future. What major trends do you see shaping the future of private practices and med spas? That's a big question, but what particular trajectory do you see things going in?
I mean, I'm sure everybody says the same thing about AI, really starting to take over. And I mean, I wouldn't say it's taking over everything, but I think it's becoming a lot more involved in practices. And I think you need to figure out how to utilize it to your best ability, because it really does make your practice smoother sometimes or help in areas. So, for example, like if you're using like a chat GPT or whatever you use, even I know there's other software that's for physicians that can help dictate notes for them, help them transcribe, there's all sorts of things to make your practice more efficient. I like, you could even use it to help you respond to a patient who's upset at you or way to respond to a online review that was not as nice or whatever. Um, Using AI really can help you, even creating content for you. I mean, it's not necessarily as good. I know there's different ones out there. Obviously, I think using a company's better, but if you don't have the budget and you need to start somewhere, maybe that's a good place to start till you grow. And then, you get more the professionals. But I think AI is a big one.
Nice.
What do you think?
And I would say, I mean, again, AI is such a buzz term, but I think mm, two or threefold. Number one, I think generally the trends that I see is more, number one, kind of leaning on the actual industry side of things, leaning more so towards holistic solutions. Not holistic, but I wouldn't say one stop shop, but people are starting to kind of view cross modality in one clinic. In it,
I agree. I also would say I see functional medicine becoming a lot bigger. Do you know what that is?
yeah, we work with a lot of functional medicine clinics.
Okay, so, you start seeing because patients or physicians are tired of hospitals telling them how to practice, what to do, insurance companies telling them how to practice, what to do. And then, so what they're doing is they're actually, what I love about it actually is trying to figure out the root cause of the patient. So they're spending more time with the
Exactly.
patient and figuring out actually what's going on and how to help them. And it's not necessarily just about drugs to give them, right? It's like all these other areas that we could help them.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of functional medicine physicians, and I think that there's a definite growing need, and there's a lot of doctors kind of trying to do it on the side a little bit at first, till they can grow it.
Yeah. As I said, three out of the five podcasts that I've done this week were on that topic. So that's why I think
It's
definitely,
true.
yeah, I think that direct primary care, I think those sort of business models where what I'm really getting at is I think personally on the actual industry side of things, tech aside, and maybe this is just because the sample size that I've been exposed to, I think it's yeah, people getting sick of putting expensive band-aids on broken arms when they should be looking at the root cause. As you said, I always say, looking at the human organism as a holistic entity instead of a bunch of siloed systems. And I think there's a movement there, um, doubling down on the relationship side of things. I think, as you said, people have become disenchanted by just being another number. That's part of an insurance policy.
Yeah. People are just trying to pay cash for more time with the doctor and figuring out what's really they're treating because they're getting treated like a person, then the doctors are treating the patient, not necessarily the x-rays or,
Yeah,
what's
I heard it. That we had a podcast earlier this week. And I'm going to butcher. So Tim, if you're listening to this, I do apologize. One of the guests, Dr. Tim Romanowski from Warrior Medical, he said he runs a direct private care practice, and he said he has it on their wall. If you listen to a patient long enough, they'll tell you what they're asking. You'll find out what they're asking for. If you listen a bit longer, you'll find out what they want. And if you listen a small bit longer again, you'll find out what they actually need. And he said, if you're not spending time with the patients, you're going to start giving them what they want, not what they need. I think that was really, really powerful. And I think that is really what people are craving today's age. Um,
Mm.
so what I would
It's
say,
kind of funny you say that though, because to me, I love that. That's exactly right. But I also kind of relate it to when I work with doctors. So when I start working with doctors, they tell you what they think they need, but what they think they need isn't actually what they need always. So that's why you got to ask more questions and find out like, okay, here's what's happening, but it's this thing way over here that's causing it. So we got to figure out what's getting to this point, right? So kind of getting to the root cause. So it's the same kind of concept, just different.
yeah, I always say, I mean, anyone listening, I apologize, that you listened to this before. I apologize. You probably heard me say this about 15 or 20 different times, but everything in life boils down to the quality of your relationships, both with yourself and others. And those rules are universal. What we're talking about could apply to somebody talking to their therapist. You know, the therapist first asks them a question, they're saying what they think is the solution. But when you dive deeper, it goes the root is deeper. It's like that whole idea of the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know, the more you think you know. So you need to keep peeling back to the root cause. And so that's one thing. And I mean, this is sort of part of what we focus on at Clinic Success Partners is using technology. Using technology to run clinics based on relationships. What I mean by that is let AI technology do all the sort of things that are taking up mental bandwidth from the team, the providers, the front desk, and so on, so that when they are talking to patients, the patients can really connect with them. So I think technology, AI, automation, it's there, it's massive. I do think certain things like using AI to automatically book in appointments, it's a big one. That's a service that we're looking to roll out because you've got somebody working 24/7. And then, as I said, just holistically lifting the overall experience. It's becoming a more competitive landscape. I don't remember the rate, but med spas are popping up left, right, and center. So I think much like, I mean, a frame that it's unusual. I'm not used to people asking me questions on this, but our knowledge,
Just kidding.
it's refreshing. It's refreshing because I got to talk about myself. Um, Everyone's favorite subject is themselves. But what I was going to say was our approach to digital marketing mirrors the trajectory that I believe clinics will go towards, and that is, again, not a doctor, but my opinion is there's more of a focus on the who, not the how. What I mean by that is when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Digital marketing metaphor, I used to do just SEO. I didn't like the fact that people were coming to me asking for help to rank higher on Google. It's not what they needed. It's not the plug. It's not the constraint in their business. But if you don't have the skill set, or you're not empowered to identify the constraint, you're giving them the wrong type of medicine, to use a metaphor. Similarly,
And then on my end too, like if you get a successful marketing guy like you helping bring in leads, if they don't have a good system in place on the back end, they're going to lose those patients anyway. What if you get, 100 new leads? Do you have somebody who's calling them? Do you have a process in place that's automatically scheduling them on your thing and then following up and making sure that they remember their appointment that they scheduled? Like, you need not just to get the leads, but also what are you going to do once you get them? I think that's a big important thing for them to remember.
Exactly. So that's what I think. On the tech side of things, I think AI was sort of the up until around 2020, 2021, whatever it was. People's advice for a business, an online business, was pick one thing, do it very well, very, very, very well, and just double down on that. I think you need to have a broader service offering, but really niche down and become a specialist in that industry. Similarly, I think on the clinic side of things, could be wrong. This is just my one Irish guy with a funny accent's opinion. Is the trend I see like that towards functional medicine. People just don't want a pill that's going to cover up symptoms, because fundamentally, it's like plugging, patching up a hole in a ceiling when there's still a burst pipe under there. The water is just going to come out somewhere else. So yeah, that's my
Temporary, right?
exactly until the next problem, and then the farmers companies get to make money off those. So yeah, separate conversation. But that is also why I'm not a biomedical engineer, because that's why I became disenchanted with it.
That's a big change from one side to the other for you.
Yeah, exactly. So
When you say that, but I have a marine biology degree, so I get it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think why you make your money and how you make your money is more important than how much you make. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, you want to make some, but do
Right.
it for the right reasons. Um, okay, great. I mean, listen, I would love to talk this for hours more, and I'm sure we will. Yeah. One last bit of advice, because I know you help a lot of people start new clinics and all that kind of thing. If you had one bit of advice for a new physician considering their own clinic, their own private practice, what would that one bit of advice be?
Really,
It can be a long, multifaceted piece of advice.
well, I mean, it's like hard because I really feel like use an expert who knows what they're doing to get you there quicker and to make sure you're not missing steps and to make sure you're not working with people you shouldn't be or you're doing things you shouldn't necessarily be. So, one, save money, till you're ready and have a plan of like a solid business plan in place. And then when you're ready, like use a consultant to help you so that you can get there a lot faster. You're going to be a lot more confident. You're going to be introduced to the right people and it'll go a lot smoother.
I love it. Jamie, it's been a pleasure, and I will definitely be picking your brain on doubling down on some of those specialties that I know you help people with. I know you do a great service, and yeah, it's been an honor. I've really enjoyed this, and
I
yeah, where can
appreciate
people?
you. It's been fun.
Hey, thanks. Until the next time, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
So my website is just businesssavvyphysician.com. They can schedule a one-on-one call with me there. I also have a YouTube channel that's called Business Savvy Physician. And I would say, booking a call and chatting with me is the best way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. I'll leave the links in the show notes. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you.